Um, Thank you. If someone in this room submitted an essay to Ben and I'm really sorry. Um, it's really a delight to be with you all. Closer. This better. Thank you. Far. Many thanks to John and Michael for your hospitality organization, and to you all for being here. I recognize very much that I stand between you and perhaps like a second pint, so I will try to keep this brief. Please feel free to get up, get another drink, or get food at will. So this is, of course, the first Hippocratic Society annual conference, which has me thinking about beginnings. Plato famously said that wonder is the beginning of all philosophy. Indeed, the most famous book on the planet begins not with philosophy, but with wonder. In the beginning, God created. The Catholic philosopher Hans Urs von Balthasar, in an oft-quoted line, argues, beauty is the word that shall be our first. But why? Why would we begin with the beautiful? So truth has long been considered the first and most important transcendental. It is the traditional place to begin. After establishing the truth of what things are, one can then turn to goodness and claim to how things should be. And only then, after reckoning with what is true and what we should do, can we turn to beauty as a kind of frosting on the cake. Metaphysics first, then ethics, then if we have time, aesthetics. So beauty ends up being kind of nice, optional, like a finishing salt on a steak, but it's hardly the meat of the issue when we talk together. It is the weakest, or at least the last, transcendental arrow to be pulled from the metaphysical quiver. But I'm convinced, and I recognize I'm biased because I grew up training in art before choosing medicine. I'm convinced by Bishop Robert Barron's reading of Balthasar that the Kantian hierarchy has reversed. The hierarchy of the transcendentals, truth first, then goodness, and then beauty, is echoed in the order of Immanuel Kant's triad of the Critique of Pure Reason, which is focused on truth, practical reason, focused on goodness, and judgment, which is focused on beauty. The latter of which is considered one of the first major works of aesthetics. Barron argues that whatever captures the imagination, inspires wonder, stokes desire, and holds attention, whatever is beautiful, touches us in a way that propositional claims and ethical precepts rarely do. Beauty makes a claim towards what is good at the very level of our hearts. And from that claim towards what is good, we are led upward to consider what is true. And that is an interesting place to begin. So, C.S. Lewis recognized this deeply, arguing that beauty serves as a kind of training ground for the future recognition of both the good and the true. He wrote in The Abolition of Man, drawing on Plato's Republic, that the students who had been formed in beauty would welcome truth because they recognize in truth what they have already come to know in the beautiful. I believe we're in a cultural moment today in which truth is becoming harder to recognize because we have not been formed in the beautiful. We are not only at risk of becoming men without chests, in Lewis's language, but souls without longing. This was the original title of Alan Bloom's classic, The Closing of the American Mind, Souls Without Longing. I think back to when, in 2013, when I started medical school, I grew up with my father giving me covers of the Journal of the American Medical Association, JAMA. So I'd literally sit in his attic between stacks of old patient notes and folders and then stacks of artwork. So I associated the work of the beautiful with the work of medicine. They were just implicitly woven together for me. And as I'm beginning medical school, JAMA decided to change their iconic cover art to a table of contents. And I think about this all the time. 2013, the year the majority of physicians would no longer recommend medicine as a career to their children. The year JAMA makes this shift. The year burnout's sort of percolating on the ground level, but the Mayo Clinic's big wave-making study about burnout had not yet come out. It's also the same year Therese Southgate died. Therese Southgate was the art historian and physician who curated JAMA's cover art for decades. So point being that this is not merely about personal interest in the beautiful, but like a witnessing to the ways in which we've changed, in some sense, what we find worthy to put on the cover of our work. This is back to Balthazar, quote, "Our situation today shows that beauty demands for itself at least as much courage and decision as do truth and goodness, and she will not allow herself to be separated and banned from her two sisters without taking them along with herself in an act of mysterious vengeance." The Hippocratic Society, as I have come to see it, is very much about courage and decision in the face of modern medicine's contemporary challenges. And it is also about the pursuit of a medicine that is true and good, which is precisely why I agree that beauty demands for herself unity with her two sisters of truth and goodness. Tomorrow, as John said, we're going to hear about the pursuit of high ideals and high truths, the goodness of the virtues and the growth of the soul. So tonight, beauty is the word that must be our first. And beauty actually will also be among the last words, if you've noticed. My friend Meg Chisholm is going to lead us in visual thinking strategies, or VTS, engaging a work of visual art as a model for facilitative teaching that unites the good, the true, and the beautiful. So let me offer 3 quick defenses for beauty with the Hippocratic Society in mind, and then we're going to turn to risk reading a poem together. I'm trying to read people's expressions on this is a welcome thing or a scary thing, and I'm getting much more fear than I am excitement, but we're going to roll with it. So first, we begin with beauty because the Hippocratic Society promotes the moral and spiritual formation of its members. Second, we begin with beauty because the Hippocratic Society sponsors serious and open discourse. And then third, we begin with beauty because the Hippocratic Society is in pursuit of good medicine. So first, beauty for the sake of our moral and spiritual formation. As the late Alistair MacIntyre, Madeleine L'Engle, many others have noted, we are formed by stories. Stories are shapers of the imagination, in James Smith's memorable phrasing. And storytelling and story shaping are themselves creative acts that depend deeply on close attention, on affect, on rhetoric, on beauty. I saw a teenage patient just yesterday who I felt was anchoring her life too firmly in the diagnostic labels she had been given. And I offered to her that the words we use matter because they tell a story. They shape our imaginations and expectations. Stories are like little homes we begin to poke around in, and then we soon furnish. And the next thing you know, you're living there. You're rising up and going to bed in the story you've chosen to tell. You know, as much as the Flexner report is bemoaned for its dehumanizing impact on medical education, it's probably overlooked just how much Flexner assumed that students were already prior formed in the humanities and in the beautiful. So if it's true that we tend to orient our lives around the beautiful, and by which I mean not merely pretty, but those things that fill us with awe, that capture our imaginations, that move us and pull us towards wholeness, then that is an interesting place to begin promoting moral and spiritual formation. And artists know this implicitly, that beautiful things provoke and clarify and sustain the ethical life. This is George Steiner on the topic. Quote, "No serious writer, composer, painter has ever doubted, even in moments of strategic aestheticism, that his work bears on good and evil and on the enhancement or diminution of the sum of humanity and man in the city. To imagine originally, to shape into significant expression, is to test in depth those potentialities of understanding and of conduct which are the life substance of the ethical. A message is being sent to a purpose." When we consider what it is we find beautiful, that the life substance of the ethical, in Steiner's phrasing, we make clear the stories we believe are worth telling. We are morally and spiritually formed by such stories. They give us a playbook, dancing steps, sheet music for how we are to live and how we are to play. So it's worth asking ourselves, I think, here at the beginning of the inaugural Hippocratic Society's annual conference, what stories are you coming to this conference with that have morally and spiritually shaped you? What stories have captured your imagination and moved you? What stories is modern medicine telling? And what stories are we telling each other within this society? What message is being sent, and to what purpose? Second, we begin with beauty because the Hippocratic Society sponsors serious and open discourse. One of my favorite philosophers, Elaine Scarry, she calls beauty a starting place for education. And she says this because when we look at beautiful things together, we are engaging each other not as machines or as workers, but as wayfarers who have laments and longings and desires and wonderings. And I've been thinking about this a lot recently, how if Descartes kind of gave us the I think, therefore I am, and it contributed to what John Swinton has called the hypercognitive account of the human, that we are our rational capacities, we are our ability to think, then we seem to be living in the kind of fallout of the kind of post-World War II, post-Joseph Pieper, I work, therefore I am, in which identity is increasingly bound up in what it is that we choose to do. And strangely, even vocation itself can be a kind of suffocating force insofar as we have lost our relationship with the caller in pursuit of a relationship with the calling. I think when we gather around beautiful things seriously, it means that we're engaging our neighbors, on different terms, which is not as a computer or as a machine or as a knower of things or as workers, but as creatures who long. Beauty greets us on the ground of a different kind of being. I think of the words offered by Christ who cries out, I thirst. Not I think, therefore I am, or I work, therefore I am, but I thirst, therefore I am. When we begin with beauty, we set the stage for serious and open discourse that begins not with rational capacity or meritocracy, but with where our souls are hungry for nourishment. We move from cogito ergo sum to sitio ergo sum. I thirst, therefore I am. And I've encountered this over and over again between forums on medical student formation and now my current work designing curricula and small group gatherings for healthcare workers and most recently surgical residents at Duke. As we gather around beautiful things, we experience the invitation into the real work that is before us. It's what C.S. Lewis called a welcome into the heart of things. Parker Palmer called works of beauty third things. John, you kind of gestured towards this. Objects we can hold before us to consider what it is we actually feel and what we actually think, even the work we're actually doing. We come away not as individuals who know more in isolation, but as neighbors who have found connection in new and unexpected ways. And this is not merely about creating a safe space, but rather a space that is serious, open, and good. A space where you may well encounter something that makes a claim on you. I think of Rilke at the end of one of my favorite poems, The Archaic Torso of Apollo. For here there is no place that does not see you. You must change your life. He's writing this in response to looking at a sculpture. You must change your life. As Elaine Scarry goes on to argue and on beauty and being just, quote, when we come upon beautiful things, they act like small tears in the surface of the world that pull us through to some vaster space. We willingly cede our ground to the thing that stands before us. I think about this all the time entering the patient room, that there's a sense of recognizing that the person before me is a gift and a mystery and a work of beauty all their own. And to see the patient in that way makes it a joy and a burden and a delight to willingly cede my ground to the one who sits before me. All right, third, this is not as brief as I'm sorry. It's we begin with beauty because we are in pursuit of good medicine. The Hippocratic Society emerged from an idea which began 10 years ago as the Society for Just Medicine. And those two words, just medicine, riffing on something Farr said that I've always loved, how those two words hold a kind of rich double meaning. You know, it's both just in terms of mere medicine or simply medicine or medicine that seeks to do only what is necessary for the sake of the patient in front of you, but also just in terms of goodness, in terms of justice. Elaine Scarry wrote on beauty and being just in part to make this point, that aesthetics and ethics share a core commitment to seeking what is fair, as in a fair trial, or a fair countenance, fair face. Or to put it much more strongly, I think both aesthetics and ethics deal in what is fitting, consinitas, which does not come from moral psychology. It actually comes prior from the world of architecture. Consinitas, fitting, part fitting to part. And specifically, the shaping of something beautiful around the needs of the human creature before you. The poet Wendell Berry makes a version of this claim over and over again, that poetry in particular pushes us to, quote, speak and act in measure. And how do we know if a poem is worthy of our attention and respect? Berry answers by its justness and its music. This is one reason the poet Christian Wyman, himself in remission from a rare blood cancer, writes that, quote, a poet's technical decisions are moral decisions. Matters of form and sound have existential meaning and consequences. When visual artist Darian Stahl reimagined her sister's, Devin Stahl is a friend, bioethicist at Baylor. Her sister, Darian's an artist, and when she reimagined her sister's multiple sclerosis MRI scans, she did so, in her words, quote, to foster an ethical turn in medicine. I was going to show some of these. If you're interested, just email me. I'd love to share her work with you. It's remarkable. John DeGruchy, a South African theologian and woodworker who was reflecting on the apartheid, he made the startling observation that apartheid was not only unjust, but ugly. Quote, the beautiful serves transformation by supplying images that contradict the inhuman and thus provide alternative transforming images to those of oppression. We are, in a profound sense, redeemed by such beauty. For art does not simply mirror reality, but challenges its destructive and alienating tendencies, making up what is lacking and anticipating future possibilities. So one final thought, and maybe while I'm sharing this, would you mind, Mike, thank you, handing out the poem. It's one final thought, and then I'll invite you to turn to a poem together with me. In Jonathan Lear's book, Radical Hope, Ethics in the Face of Cultural Devastation, he reflects on the fate of the Crow nation and the possibility of virtue when one's very understanding of virtues has been devastated. And according to Lear, what would be required is a new kind of Crow poet. Quote, a creative maker of meaningful space, one who could take up the past and rather than use it for nostalgia or ersatz mimesis, project it into vibrant new ways to live and to be. I take modern medicine, both for patients, clinicians, and trainees, to be a kind of devastated cultural and ethical space in which a radical work of creativity is needed. And radical, not because it's new or edgy or shocking, but because it is rooted, radicus, literally in the soil and therefore also humble, from the humus, meaning earth. So we begin with beauty this evening to anchor our work in what is intrinsically joyful, yet faithfully disruptive, steadfastly rooted in reality, yet humbly hinting at what is not yet, growing into the lived experience of our patients, our colleagues, and each other, rather than in generic self-care or arts reflection skills or humanities interest groups. And I can tell you, as one trained in art and having started underground art appreciation groups, it won't be solved by putting art back on the cover of JAMA. And it will be a challenge, too, as the poet Samuel Johnson wrote after the death of one of his friends who was a physician, display the power of art without the show. Display the power of art without the show. In the face of medicine's many ailments, it will be a challenge, as this poem will invite us to do, to, quote, risk delight, end quote. So with that, I'd love to risk delight with all of you. I recognize I'm in a room full of master educators and very brilliant people, and I'm going to move forward as if this is a new exercise for all of us. You may have unpleasant or insecure memories of reading poetry, so a friendly reminder that you don't have to be a poetry expert to enjoy this. You don't even have to like poetry, invite you to come as you would want. The poem you have in front of you, I'm really not going to give any setup on this poem other than just its title and its author. So this is Jack Gilbert's A Brief for the Defense. I'm going to read the poem 3 times. I may do it twice. I'll try to read the room. with some questions between each reading. I'm going to leave some silence in between the readings, and if you'll humor me by just protecting that silence and reflecting on your own, and then we're going to turn to your neighbors at your tables and discuss the poem freely. But those first few minutes of just engaging the poem on your own accord are quite important. So I'll read the poem once, and then afterward ask some questions. Can I borrow your, thank you so much.
Yeah.
All right. Actually, I have it right in front of me. Thank you. Yeah. A Brief for the Defense by Jack Gilbert. Sorrow everywhere, slaughter everywhere. If babies are not starving someplace, they are starving somewhere else with flies in their nostrils. But we enjoy our lives because that's what God wants. Otherwise, the mornings before summer dawn would not be made so fine. The Bengal tiger would not be fashioned so miraculously well. The poor women at the fountain are laughing together between the suffering they have known and the awfulness in their future, smiling and laughing while somebody in the village is very sick. There is laughter every day in the terrible streets of Calcutta, and the women laugh in the cages of Bombay. If we deny our happiness, resist our satisfaction, we lessen the importance of their deprivation. We must risk delight. We can do without pleasure, but not delight, not enjoyment. We must have the stubbornness to accept our gladness in the ruthless furnace of this world. To make injustice the only measure of our attention is to praise the devil. If the locomotive of the Lord runs us down, we should give thanks that the end had magnitude. We must admit there will be music, despite everything. We stand at the prow again of a small ship, anchored late at night in the tiny port, looking over to the sleeping island. The waterfront is 3 shuttered cafes and 1 naked light burning. To hear the faint sound of oars in the silence as a rowboat comes slowly out and then goes back is truly worth all the years of sorrow that are to come. So while maintaining silence for the next minute or so, just take a mental note of your first impressions of this poem. Are there any unfamiliar words or words used in unfamiliar ways? How are the sentences arranged? Are you coming into this exercise with other stuff on your mind, other fears or hopes for the day, patient case that still haunts you from several days ago that you need to jot down on your phone to release that thought and then engage the poem? What patterns of sounds did you hear? Is there a single word that jumped out to you? Brief for the Defense by Jack Gilbert. Sorrow everywhere, slaughter everywhere. If babies are not starving someplace, they're starving somewhere else with flies in their nostrils. But we enjoy our lives because that's what God wants. Otherwise, the mornings before summer dawn would not be made so fine, that the Bengal tiger would not be fashioned so miraculously well. The poor women at the fountain are laughing together between the suffering they have known and the awfulness in their future, smiling and laughing while somebody in the village is very sick. There's laughter every day in the terrible streets of Calcutta, and the women laugh in the cages of Bombay. If we deny our happiness, resist our satisfaction, we lessen the importance of their deprivation. We must risk delight. We can do without pleasure, but not delight, not enjoyment. We must have the stubbornness to accept our gladness in the ruthless furnace of this world. To make injustice the only measure of our attention is to praise the devil. If the locomotive of the Lord runs us down, we should give thanks that the end had magnitude. We must admit there will be music despite everything. We stand at the prow again of a small ship, anchored late at night in a tiny port, looking over to the sleeping islands, the waterfront. There's 3 shuttered cafes and 1 naked light burning. To hear the faint sound of oars and the silence as a rowboat comes slowly out and then goes back is truly worth all the years of sorrow that are to come. So again, a little bit more silence here. Are there emotions this poem is bringing up for you? What does it feel like in your body to experience this poem? Can you hear or see yourself in the poem, or your patients, colleagues? Is the poem actually a good brief for the defense? So I'll read it one more time, and then I'll get myself out of the way and invite you all to discuss the poem at your tables. Before I read it this last time, one invitation I'll offer is to simply, if you're finding all the questions too much and you're kind of like, I don't know where this is going, just simply observe the one line that seems to be pinging you or calling out to you. And what I would offer in that advice too is try to resist the impulse to choose the line that you think would be cool or clever or poetically motivated to call, and pay attention to where in your heart and in your soul the line that's actually pinging you is pinging you. And just make a note of that line. A Brief for the Defense by Jack Gilbert. Sorrow everywhere, slaughter everywhere. If babies are not starving someplace, they are starving somewhere else, with flies in their nostrils. But we enjoy our lives because that's what God wants. Otherwise, the mornings before summer dawn would not be made so fine. The Bengal tiger would not be fashioned so miraculously well. The poor women at the fountain are laughing together between the suffering they have known and the awfulness in their future, smiling and laughing while somebody in the village is very sick. There is laughter every day in the terrible streets of Calcutta, and the women laugh in the cages of Bombay. If we deny our happiness, resist our satisfaction, we lessen the importance of their deprivation. We must risk delight. We can do without pleasure, but not delight, not enjoyment. We must have the stubbornness to accept our gladness in the ruthless furnace of this world. To make injustice the only measure of our attention is to praise the devil. If the locomotive of the Lord runs us down, we should give thanks that the end had magnitude. We must admit there will be music, despite everything. We stand at the prow again of a small ship, anchored late at night in the tiny port, looking over to the sleeping island, the waterfront. Is 3 shuttered cafes and 1 naked light burning. To hear the faint sound of oars in the silence as a rowboat comes slowly out and then goes back is truly worth all the years of sorrow that are to come. Thanks for y'all's patience. I invite y'all to discuss the poem freely at your table, and then I'll have a very brief closing word at the end. Thank you.